Have you ever made a mistake? I have not, so sorry to hear that. Do you feel like a loser? It's okay. It's okay. It's okay if you're a failure. It's okay if you're a loser. I was raised by a woman, Margaret McInerny, an angel, a weirdo. I say that as a compliment, whose catchphrase, if she was a 90s sitcom mother, would be, mistakes were made. Mistakes were made. When my mother says mistakes were made, she could be talking about anything. She could be talking about her and my dad moving our entire family to a small town, buying a house that was decaying underneath them because it was built on a filled-in marsh that was not filled in well enough, and there was an active spring beneath it that was just flowing water into an ever-damp basement that smelled like what you think a basement built on a marsh would smell like. She could be talking about that. She could be talking about not picking up her 10-year-old daughter from swimming in Minnesota in the dead of winter, and my hair had frozen into icicles, and my coach, who was like a 22-year-old college student, was like, "Where's your mom?" And I was like, "I don't know. It's 1992. We don't have cell phones. We just got to wait for her to whip into the parking lot in her Camry with the side door that doesn't open, and then I'll get in and you can be free, to enjoy your Friday night." Look, neither of us are enjoying this. When my mother said mistakes were made, she meant, yeah, I messed up. Okay. And the world went on. To my mother, the only mistakes that counted were, if someone died, like the standard was, did someone die? And if the answer is no, like, okay, let's move on. Let's learn from it. Let's get over it. Like, everybody makes mistakes. I did not absorb that attitude. I absorbed what I think is the curse of the gifted and talented child, which is if you are not immediately good at something, you're the worst. If you try something and you are not good at it, don't tell anybody. Keep that shame deep within your body. Wrap it up. Keep it forever, obviously. Keep it forever. Don't share it with anybody. Don't let anybody know that you messed up. Don't let anybody know that you are imperfect. Perfection is simply the price that you pay to exist in this world, and anything less than perfect is obviously not good, and anything not good is the worst, and you don't want to be the worst, do you? I was such a mentally healthy kid. It was the 90s. Mental health had not really been invented yet, and it definitely did not apply to children. But think about a time in your life when you heard about someone else messing up. And I'm not talking about the schadenfreude. I don't know how to say that word. Schadenfreude. Anytime I see a word that belongs in the German language, I think that's a word for reading in your head. That's not a word for saying out loud. But you know the word that I'm thinking about. I'm not talking about taking joy in somebody else's failures, somebody else's shortcomings, somebody else's mistakes. I'm talking about when you know that you are not the only person who has done that very thing or something similar to it, and you realize, oh, I'm just a person. I'm just a person. I'm pulling this out of thin air. I'm literally making this up. This has never happened to me personally, but like when you walk up to a building and the door is built that you feel like you should pull it, because there's a handle that's a pull handle and not a push handle, and you pull and you almost dislocate your shoulder. And then you realize, oh no, I have to push in, and you do. And then you're in getting coffee. Again, just an example I made up out of nowhere. And someone else comes up and does the same thing. And you look at them and you're like, buddy, I did that too. And they're like, oh, okay. Yeah. And then you both, like, your embarrassment somehow like dissipates. It somehow just dissolves between the two of you because of course it's not that big of a deal, right? Now, there are some mistakes that are obviously bigger than others, but when you realize that it is not just you, it can feel so much better. And because I am a very, very serious academic, that joke's never gonna get old to me. I will say every time I put on my glasses, I'm like, oh, that's why I got them. That's why I got them. So I could see things, so I could see them. That's anecdotal evidence, but then I went on the internet and I Googled sharing mistakes good. Sharing mistakes, does it help? Sharing mistakes, should we do it? And you know what? Yeah, we should. And I know that because I found an article by the Stanford Social Innovation Review. I had to read that on my screen, the Stanford Social Innovation Review. And the title of this article is, It's Time to Share Our Failures. This article is about global public health workers whose jobs really are a matter of life or death. But I think that this applies even if your job is podcasting or, I don't know, accounting, or what jobs do people do? Please let me know what your job is. I have no idea the jobs that people do outside of the ones that are just listed on buildings that I drive by. I'm like lawyer, accountant, dentist, medical building. I don't know what people do for jobs. It's so fascinating to me. I sat next to a person on an airplane and he worked in power lines. Like he sold things that go on the power lines. And I was like, that's crazy. I literally just have never thought of, I just thought power lines just grew out of the ground and that's where they were. But no, there's a whole industry around them. I'm a dumb person. If groups of global public health officials can get together and share their failures, their shortcomings, their mistakes in hopes of educating one another and preventing other people from making the same mistakes, if they can learn from sharing their own mistakes with other people, their peers, their colleagues, their superiors, their competition, maybe in some ways, I think we can do it too. And so I am going to go first. I'm going to share some of my most embarrassing mistakes. And these are going to be quite a wide range because I wrote them down in a notebook over the past few weeks. And then also I got some input. I got some input from my children. I got some input from, my husband. I got some input. Look, I got some input is all you need to know. A lot of therapy notes. Oh, okay. The Eras Tour kicked off in March of 2023. I had worked so hard to get tickets for the Eras Tour. And by worked so hard, I mean I sat in that line online with one monitor on that and one monitor on my work. And when it was my time to buy tickets, it just would not work. It would not work. It kept glitching out and glitching out. I kept getting all the way to the checkout and they would just poof, disappear out of my cart beside myself. I was a 40-year-old woman having like an absolute mental breakdown over Taylor Swift tickets. I've seen Taylor Swift live like 2 or 3 times before that. It was not a matter of life or death, but I really, 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 really wanted to see this show. And finally, months after, I got an email from Taylor Nation saying, you've got another chance. You can buy these tickets. And I get online and it works. And I am in section N, Nora, row 7, my lucky number, row 7, one of my lucky numbers, seats 13, another lucky number, and 14. I buy them. It is a great deal. Okay, this was like $500 for these 2 seats. I cannot believe my luck. I am so excited. Months and months and months and months go by. I don't know who I'm going to take to the first night of the Eras Tour. I think about taking my son, but crowds bother him, loud noises bother him. It's kind of a sensory nightmare. And so a few days before he was like, I don't want to go. My daughter was like, I don't know, like maybe, maybe not. My husband was like, I could go. And I was like, I literally don't want to take you. I'm sorry. I love you. But like, this is just, you're not the vibe for night 1 of the Eras Tour. I don't know who I will bring, but it won't be you. I have like 2 friends at the time in this city. One of them is like, I don't really like Taylor Swift. And I was like, how did we become friends? The other one has plans. My best friend from growing up. We've known each other since 2nd grade. We have been friends since 5th grade. Known each other in 2nd, friends since 5th. Why? 2nd, 3rd, 4th, this girl was a B. Okay, this girl was a B. She knows what she did. I did eat dog food. And you know what? It was worth it. She's one of the best people I know now. And our children are friends. Like, she happens to be in Phoenix visiting her in-laws night 1 of the Eras Tour. It is kismet. I tell her, ditch your in-laws, ditch your family. I'm coming to get you. We are going to see Taylor Swift. Does she like Taylor Swift? She's like, fine, I guess. But she's like, I will go. This will be such a good time. I pick her up. We drive. It's like an hour of just traffic. We're crying, we're laughing, we're connecting. It's like one of those nights where you finally get time with a person that you see maybe like once or twice a year and you just fall back into your old like selves. And we park, everyone else got like Ubered or something. So it's like, there's plenty of parking. There's plenty of parking. We park, we walk up to the stadium. I open my ticket app. We go through and they're like, we don't need it yet. Just go through security. Okay, we go through security. We check out all the merch outside. We go to the gate where they are taking tickets. I open my ticket app. They scan the ticket. I swipe to the next ticket. There's no other ticket. I have one ticket. I have one ticket to night 1 of the Eras Tour. I have a friend with me.
What?
I believe in my heart, in my soul, that I have seats 13 and 14. I don't. I have seat 13 only. It was not a deal. I paid $500 for it. Yes, that's a floor seat. Yes, there are people who are going to say like, that's such a deal. But the pricing structure of Taylor Swift tickets is a rant for another time. That little capitalist queen. I have a lot of opinions on that. The point is, I got to the gate with a friend I've known for over 30 years, and I did not have a ticket to the Eras tour with her. I just never checked it beforehand. I know in my heart and soul that I bought 2 tickets, and yet the evidence would suggest I did not. I did not buy 2 tickets. I bought 1 ticket. She's like, check again. I checked again. We checked again. I looked at her and she was like, oh well. We passed an Olive Garden a mile back. I'm going to walk over to that Olive Garden, have a glass of wine, Uber back to my family, and I'll see you next time I see you. This was the only person that I could have done this with, truly. I got 2 amazing tickets to Taylor Swift, and my best friend from growing up happens to be in town, so I invited her, and we just got to the stadium. Erin.
Hello.
I only bought 1 ticket.
It is okay. We are good.
I think if I'd done this with my husband, he would have been fine, honestly. He would have been like, wow, that's some classic Nora. If I would have done it with my kid, I would have been really in a pickle. I would have been like, ooh, can you send a 10-year-old home in an Uber alone? Can he just wait outside while I go to the concert? It would not have been good. I did that with /2, a friend that I've known for so long that she literally didn't care. She was like, we have left each other at clubs, okay, in our early 20s. We have been through things, right? Like we have pulled each other out of gutters. This is fine. We're both sober. We're both 40. We both have, families. Like, okay, so you didn't buy a second Taylor Swift ticket. I still feel so bad about that. And I still feel so stupid about that. But as you'll see from this list of mistakes, a common theme with my brain is just like, I believe something to be true and I just don't verify my own thoughts. So that's on me. And I guess what I learned was double check. And also you can't trust Taylor Swift ticket sale. You can't trust it. I had almost bought so many tickets during the checkout process. I swear I selected both of those tickets. I would never buy myself 1 ticket. And I thought they were $240 each. No, it was $500 for 1 ticket. And I sent my friend away at the gate. Mistakes were made. A lot of these are travel related. I have a hard time with dates, times, places, details. I use calendars. I write things down in a notebook. I have many systems, and yet there's just something. I've heard this is like an ADHD trait, but I also think it's just generally an overwhelmed, stressed out person trait to mix things up and kind of be so overscheduled that you don't really know whether you're coming or going. This is something that I've been working on deeply, but there was a time in my life where I was even more chaotic than just leaving a friend at the gate of, night 1 of the Eras tour, and where the following mistakes were totally normal behavior. 1, flying to another city. I was on tour for my book. But I'm trying to say it like other people say it. People say tour. I was on tour. I say tour. I say I was on tour. That's more true to who I am as a person who grew up in the Midwest. I was on tour. And that's how I'm going to say it. Okay. I was on tour for my book, mostly a carry-on. And there was also like a few cities where your bag will get gate checked, right? There's not enough room, or I just didn't want to drag it on the plane. I gate checked my bag, which means you have to remember to pick it up. At baggage claim. Instead, I just got off the plane, got on to public transportation, and was like, God, I feel so light. And I was like, I don't have my bag. I don't have my bag with all my belongings in it. And I had to take the train all the way back, go to baggage claim. And it was like the lone bag sitting there. Whoops. I've gotten to the airport and not had my suitcase. Like I just got in the car with my father-in-law, who loves an airport drop off. We got all the way there. I opened the trunk of his car and I said, oh man, I don't have my bag. And I should also mention that I like to get to the airport with minutes until my flight. I live for the thrill. I don't want to spend any more time in an airport than I have to. So this man drove me clear across town to get my bag and then brought me back to the airport so I could get on my flight, which I made with like minutes to spare, like just sprinting through the airport, and then drove himself all the way home. And now that I think of it, he has not dropped me at the airport since then. Mistakes were made. Another travel one. We planned a trip down to Phoenix after Christmas during winter break. We did not live here yet, but this is where, my first husband's family lives. This is where it's just a good place to come, like right after Christmas. We had always come down here right after Christmas for like a little winter break. I brought my sister's kids. We brought our oldest son, and we brought his girlfriend along. This is 10 people all flying together as a group. We get to the Phoenix airport. We go to the rental car place. My sister has rented like an SUV. I've rented an SUV. I get up to the counter. I'm like, hi, my name's not on the Hertz board. I am a gold member. And they say, yeah, it's not on there because you didn't rent a car. And I say, well, I did. I thought, can I though? No, they didn't have any cars. Mistakes were made. You've got to check. And sometimes I think like I'm all the way to the end of something, like right to the checkout. And I believe in my heart that I've hit buy or I've hit like checkout. I feel like I've done that, but I haven't. And we were in quite a pickle. We have an aunt who was able to lend us her car. It was not great. It was really not great. And that was on me. Mistakes were made. God, so many of these are travel related. I think that a lot of these mistakes are going to make it seem like I really do need like an intervention or maybe like a CAT scan or something. We're on tour again. A terrible thanks for asking. Bad vibes only tour. This is like spring 2023. This is like one of the last legs of that tour. It's me. It's Marcel Malekebu. We have gone from all these places in the Midwest. We're going from St. Louis, Missouri to Kansas, somewhere in Kansas, Lawrence, Kansas. That's where we're going. We're going to Lawrence, Kansas, which is left of, also known as west of Missouri. Okay. It's that way. Okay. Missouri's here, and then Kansas is that way. And then the rest of the country is this way. We leave Missouri the morning of the Kansas show. We've been up late the night before, like, meeting people, like signing books, like just doing our post-show stuff. We drive. I see an antique mall, which I can't resist. We go to the antique mall. It's weird. There's a lot of racist stuff there. I was like, why do white people feel so comfortable like displaying all this stuff? I was like, we should go. So we left. So I just pressed go. We got back in the car. I opened the Maps app. I said, go. We're going to the same hotel brand in each city. So I just see the hotel name. I press go. We're driving for like, an hour. I'm like, God, this looks really familiar. And also we just keep getting further, like on the map, we get further away from Kansas. I can't figure it out. Like the map must be broken. There must be something wrong with the satellites. Something is happening. We're going back to the other hotel, the hotel that we just left. We're going back to St. Louis, not to Kansas. Now, we've already stopped to go antiquing. I've stopped twice for like snacks and to pee. We are already cutting it quite close for our show time. And now I've driven us right, also known as east. I went the wrong direction. We are driving the wrong direction. I am driving the wrong direction. There is only one driver. It's me. That was on me. I was doing that wrong. Quit that map. Recalibrate it. Go back. We pulled up to that show in Lawrence, Kansas with like 20 minutes to spare. Like people were checking in. People were outside the venue with their tickets going in. And I was like not dressed, not ready, frazzled. And we hadn't even gotten to do a sound check. And that was on me. Marcel was like, this feels like we're not going the right way. I was like, well, if we're using the Maps app, how would we not be going the right way? User error, mistakes were made. So this one is not travel related. This one is parenting related. And I don't know why parenting ones feel so bad. I think because you're talking about another person's life. A child is a whole human. And I think people forget that. And I think that's maybe why they're so shameful. And also because parents really do believe themselves to be imbued with some incredible power when really parents are just people. There's nothing special about a parent. We are just human beings who have decided like, well, I can take care of another human being with like literally most of us have no training or qualifications to do so. We were just like, well, I want to, so I'm going to. I have always been a working mom. All moms are working moms. All parents are working parents, but I've always had at least one job since I became a parent. And for the past 10 years, I've had more than one job. I've had so many jobs. And when the podcast was really like, I don't want to say like at its height, but it was really extremely stressful. I wasn't able to record at home. I had to drive from a western suburb in Minneapolis over to St. Paul. It was so far during like rush hour traffic all the time. And meanwhile, buses don't pick kids up at a time that's like convenient for parents. School starts after a lot of parents' work days or right before it, but then it ends in like the middle of a parent's work day. It's just a lot. And it was one of those days where I actually felt like, okay, I have everything under control. I got the littlest kid dropped off at daycare. I had, my kindergartner in the back of the car. I was like, we got this, dude. I'm going to drop you at school like a little bit early. He's a stressed out kid. He likes to be one of the first kids there. Then I'm going to go over to work. I'm going to, do these podcast interviews. Then I'm going to be home to pick you up. Everything's perfect. We've got this. Awesome. We pull up to the school and I am, one of the first moms there, which I like kind of can't believe like that never happens. There's no one else there. I'm like, wow, we are like early and like good for you. He feels so good about it. He goes into the school. He gives me a thumbs up. I drive away. I, am on a conference call in my minivan, like going to work. Another call comes through. I'm like, ignore. Like, who's calling me? The school's calling me. The school is calling me because I dropped off my kindergartner on a teacher in-service day. There was no school. They communicated this, I have to say. Of course they did. They send out emails. They send out notifications. They have apps. There's a shared calendar. I just missed all of the signs, like there being no other kids being dropped off, and sent my kindergartner into a mostly empty school where he wandered around until a janitor was like, what are you doing here? And he was like, I'm here for kindergarten. And the janitor was like, what? What? And then they called and I ignored the call. And then by the time I realized what had happened, as I pulled in to park in St. Paul, like 45 minutes away from his school, I had to go all the way back and pick him up. And, we still talk about that. We still talk about that to this day. Mistakes were made. And you know what? I shared that on Instagram and I was like, this is one of my more embarrassing ones. And so many teachers messaged me and said, you would not believe how often this happens. This happens every single in-service day. There's some parents who just like forget or didn't know or didn't realize and drop their kids off. It's not just you. But when you're the kid, it definitely feels like it's just you. Mistakes were made. We just took a trip back to Minnesota to visit family. I wasn't sure how long our trip would be or whether or not we would be leaving from Minnesota to go join the rest of, our family on a different trip or not. So I booked one-way tickets for me and the 3 youngest kids. I booked an Airbnb for 6 days. And then right before we left, I realized, actually, like we've got more time. We can stay for 2 weeks. But that Airbnb was already booked up. So I had to find another one. And the guy who managed it was like, no big deal. I manage another one. I can put you into it. He sends me the listing. I don't really open it. I just see like one picture. I'm like, it's fine. There's enough beds for everybody. Sounds good. We get there and it's really lovely. It's very cute. It's very like wacky. It's meant for young people who are throwing like maybe a bachelor party or having like a little get together and really want a cute place to take photos for Instagram. There's so many Playboys in it. I'm not a prude, but like there's Playboys everywhere. So, I did have a good conversation about that, like with my young sons who were really like not that interested in it, but also thought it was like kind of funny. My 7-year-old was like, it's kind of weird to be like, I'm going to take a picture of a naked lady and put it in a book. Isn't that kind of weird? And I was like, yeah, that is kind of weird. I think someday you might feel differently about it, but when you put it that way, it is kind of weird. And he goes, yeah, and some of them you can even see the points. I was like, yeah, you can see the points on some of them. You can. But, a lot of really good journalism in those magazines if you're interested, guys. The articles are really what bring people to that publication. Mistakes were made. I think the parenting mistakes are also the most humbling because, of course, as a woman, I hold my mother to an incredibly high standard, a standard that I myself have not been able to meet as a mother. And as a young person, I really almost thought of it as a sport to point out all of the things that she had done wrong, the time she was, late to pick me up from practice, or the time she threw out my Destiny's Child CD on the freeway, Highway 100, because I wasn't listening to her and we were having an argument. So she littered with a very expensive CD that I spent my own money on that CD at Sam Goody, and she threw it out the window on Highway 100. And now I also can see that she was a woman who was working an exhausting job, well over 40, 50 hours in the advertising industry, like a deeply sexist industry, I mean, pretty much to this day, but definitely in the 80s and 90s, coming home to take care of a husband and children who definitely did not share the load with her, and still creating magic and fun and dinner for our family. So I think of her a lot differently now when I make my own parenting mistakes, when I project onto my own children, or when I have expectations of them that aren't fair, or when I say or do things that I regret. In the very early stages of, my widowhood experience, I remember getting messages from women who had also been widowed really recently. And many of them said things like, oh, I wish I was doing as well as you. And, I really was not doing all that well, but I was really presenting an image of somebody who was doing well. And there are a lot of reasons that we do that. There are a lot of reasons why we don't share our failures or our mistakes, not just online, but with the people that we know and are close to. And one is that we really, in America, we love a winner. We love a person who is doing well, and we value perfection. We value mastery. We don't really value the messy part, even though everybody who knows how to walk was also a little baby who did not know how to walk. And every person who is now really good at something is also a person who probably wasn't that great at it to begin with. There are some exceptions. There are some people who are just naturally good at things, but most of us do know what it's like to try something and fail at it, to mess up spectacularly, to do or say the wrong thing at the wrong moment. It is not just you. This one's embarrassing. Oh God. Okay, I'd just written my first book. I was a little baby author. I didn't know how things worked. And a thing that a lot of people don't really tell you about publishing is that there are some books that get all the support, everything. Everybody who works in publishing is so exhausted. The editors, the publicists, the marketing people, they are working on launching, promoting, so many books all the time. And a lot of it does come down to the author. It just does. A lot of the responsibility is going to be yours, not because people don't care, not because people aren't doing their jobs, but because people have so many jobs to do. It's simply too much. So my first book is coming out. Everybody's like, well, if it can get carried at Target, that would be so helpful. And I think, oh my God, my book is about my dead husband. My dead husband worked at Target. Of course they'll want to carry my book. Of course. And I do a little bit of research. I find out who the book buyer is. I write them a note. I send them my book and a little package. And that was not the right thing to do. That was not the right thing to do. I got a really angry email from the sales team at the publication house that was don't do that. It's embarrassing and bad. And it made them mad. And I was like, oh, okay, sorry. That's embarrassing. But you don't know until you try. And it just felt normal. Oh, I'm just a person. This person's just a person. But apparently that was the wrong thing to do. That was the wrong thing to do. And I was so embarrassed by it for so long. And I'm I don't know, just tried something. And I was a person. Okay. At one of my first jobs, I was an assistant. Not a good one. Really not a good one, but I was an assistant. So part of my job was to communicate with other people who were in assisting roles and also people who were in leadership roles. And I was supposed to recap meetings and take the notes and send the recaps out to everybody. And I would recap the meetings and send them out. I would usually add like a little bit of like, an email with like a little bit of like flair to it. And I thought that was a good thing for a creative agency where we were supposed to be doing creative work, but apparently I was not supposed to be doing creative work. I was an assistant, and I got an email from my boss that said, "Come see me." And she said, "You need to not use your personality in this job. Change your personality. Don't have a personality." And so then I never did that again, and I left that job very quickly. But I just remember being like, oh, okay. I thought I was just like spicing up it wasn't inappropriate. It was like, here's another rip-roaring recap. It's like, how many times can you send an email like, per your last email, here's like a recap of everything you said, even though you're adults, you should be able to retain some of this information, but here's a recap of everything that was said in this meeting. I just thought it was creative. It was like 2 sentences, but anyways, lesson learned. Don't have a personality. At another early job, I had to work with this woman who worked in a different office, was now looking back, underpaid, overworked, but she was really mean. Okay. She was really mean. All of her communications, like on the phone, in person, when I saw her in person, or through email, were just like extremely gruff, very short, and like not helpful, just not helpful. And I can't remember even the topic of the email, but I had asked this person something, and like other people were on the email, and she replied, it was basically like, "This isn't my problem." And instead of forwarding the email, I replied and said, "I guess that's what I get for just asking a question." I thought I was forwarding it. I was replying to it. So she got that email about her sent to her, and she called me and apologized. Okay. So sometimes a mistake can actually fix things. Sometimes, and she apologized for her mistake, which was like being mean to a 22-year-old who did not know what they were doing in a chaotic job where they had already been told not to have a personality. Okay. Mistakes were made. I think I saved some lives here. I also got some mistakes from people. Some people shared their mistakes with me. One woman reached out and said that she had put the wrong date and location in her husband's death announcement. She put the wrong date and location for his funeral, but people still figured it out. People showed up. Okay. All right. Mistakes were made. Nobody died except her husband, who was already dead. Okay. Here's one of my mom's mistakes that she doesn't think was a mistake. When I was I don't know, whatever age where kids like can't really walk. They used to have these things in the 80s where it was like a little walker. I was in one of those little saucers, and then I was face down on the concrete with like my little feet kicking in the air, and the Polish lady across the street like came running across the street screaming, picked up my little bloody body, brought me upstairs, and like knocked on the door of my house and was like, "There's, like in Polish, like there's a bloody baby on the bottom of your stairs." And my mom was like, "Oh, your sister was supposed to be watching you. Like, that's Megan's mistake." My sister's 8 years older than me. My sister was a 9-year-old, like, who was in charge of me. My mom was like, "Yeah, she was probably like flirting with the neighbor boy." The 80s and 90s were a wild time. I would not wish that on any children today. My mother was negligent. I think that was like normal for the time. You're like, you're in charge of your sister. Okay, she can't walk. Keep her in the walker. Keep an eye on her. Don't let her go down the concrete stairs onto the ground. Okay, she was 9. Okay, I got some mistakes sent to me, and this one I think will help make my mom feel better. This person writes, "I was pulling my daughter up our front stoop by the arms when she was like 2, and I gave her nursemaid's elbow / dislocated her arm. She's now 8 and perfectly fine. I'm not abusive. I know that's what all abusive people say, but I swear." Here's the thing about kids' arms. They will just pop out. They'll pop out. You think you're swinging them for fun? Boom, arm pops out. Okay? Arm pops out. Mistakes were made. I'm going to tell you the biggest mistake I ever made, the one that stays with me, the one that haunts me to this day. It happened a few years ago. We just moved here to Phoenix, Arizona. It was the winter, it was January. So it's like, you know, in the 60s, we had friends visiting us who have 4 or 5 kids. When all of our kids are together, it's a gang of kids. It's just a bunch of kids. So there were 2 moms, 2 dads, a bunch of kids, 2 different cars. We all went for a hike. We all came back to our house. Everybody had kind of switched cars. We had some of her kids in my car, some of my kids in her car. We all went into our house. The husbands were going to like grill and make dinner. All the kids were playing, and I took her outside to our front yard because there is the most amazing tree in our neighborhood. Have you read the book Go Dog Go? Go Dogs Go? Okay, it's just it's one of my favorite books, honestly. Such a good kids book. And in it, there's this tree where all the dogs climb up and have a party. That tree is in our neighborhood. I swear to you, it is so lush. It's like if a kid drew a tree, it would draw this tree. It's just perfect. It's so perfect. And the branches are all low. So if I knew the person who owned this tree, I could like climb up this tree and probably have a Go Dog Go party. I just needed her to see this tree. We walk out to our driveway to go look at this tree, and we hear, and I'm like, what the heck is that? And I turn over, I look at my car, and it's my 3-year-old banging on the window. And my first thought is, why are you playing in the car? You are in trouble. You should not have been out here. And then I realized we left him in there. We left him in that car. I left him in that car. I was the only adult in that car. Everybody else in that car was like 11, 10, 7. I left him in that car. I mean, who knows how long it had been, you know, to him, it doesn't matter. It had been forever. He did not have the finger strength to like undo his little chest belt. He had been yelling. This is so horrible. It's so horrible. It's so horrible. It's so horrible because you hear about kids dying like this all the time. Kids do die like this all the time. And I opened it and he looked up at me and he was like, everybody left me. And I yelled it for you and I waited for you and I yelled it for you. And I like held him and he was covered in tears and sweat. And it was not that hot of a day, but it doesn't need to be that hot of a day for that to happen. And this was also a time in my life where I was deeply, deeply, deeply so stressed out, working all the time. I was never where my body was. I was never, ever fully present. And it could have cost him his life. It really could have. And the look that my friend and I gave each other was like, I did not feel judged at all. Like I felt so held by her because I knew like we both knew exactly what we had avoided. And so did our husbands. It was just so rough. It was so rough. He talks about it to this day. He is almost 8 years old and immediately taught him how to undo his own stuff, but it just didn't matter. It's like sometimes a mistake is just a mistake and sometimes you are just grazing the rough edge of the universe. Like it is truly a sliding door moment where things could have gone either way and there is no excuse for it. And there's also like no reason for it, for why it doesn't happen when it happens to other people. And this, I remember after this had happened, there was a story in Minneapolis or St. Paul. These stories happen all the time where often a person who is a low wage worker who doesn't have childcare options is left with the choice, like lose my job or bring my kid, leave them in the car and hope they're okay, go check on them periodically. And there was a parent who had to do that and whose child died. And there also, I don't know where I'm going with this other than like, there are just moments like that where when you make a mistake like that, the other mistakes don't really matter, right? Like no one is gonna die because I forgot to get a rental car because I only had one ticket to the Eras tour. But it's that kind of mistake that's hard to forgive yourself for, even though it did turn out okay because you knew it couldn't. And I actually got a lot of submissions like that from other moms, from a mother who had a newborn and a 4-year-old the absolute brain fog, exhaustion that happens when you are raising really, really small children. They were at the library, which they do, all the time. They went to the library every week, and she had gotten into the car. She looked in the rearview mirror, saw her 4-year-old buckled, started the car, checked her other mirror, and saw her baby in the car seat next to the car. Could have run over a baby. Has never told anybody this before she emailed me. Missed the worst case scenario by just like a breath, by a hair. I think what is so hard about stories where like the worst thing happens is how immediately people say, well, I could never do that. I would never do that. Right? Like the comments on stories where children die or people, I have several friends whose husbands were struck by trains. Like the number of people who say awful things like, well, that was dumb. Like, whoa, whoa. Like just the lack of empathy and like the lack of understanding, like that could happen to anyone. Like we are all susceptible to like just slight misses all the time. Some that are like our fault, but does it matter? Like, does it matter whose fault it is? So this woman had a 3-year-old who was in that phase where he's waking up a lot during the night and would come and wake up mom and dad because that's what they like to do. And during tuck-in, she says to her 3-year-old, tonight, don't wake mommy up, wait till I come and get you. Mom wakes up at 2 a.m., goes to the bathroom, and there's her 3-year-old. He woke up and he didn't wake his mom up. He just sat in the bathroom waiting for her. And she felt so guilty and she felt so bad. Like, of course he could have come to her. Like, of course he could have. But like, that's what she said because she was so exhausted and because it's so exhausting to have kids. So yeah, mistakes were made. My high school reunion came up, my 20-year high school reunion. And at this point, I don't know that we necessarily need high school reunions because everyone was like, oh, I saw this person on Facebook. I saw this person doing this. I saw this person doing this. But like, you don't really know. You don't really know somebody. And I would like to bring back the idea of, like analog, right? Having a yearbook that you sign with your hands, having a high school reunion, having reunions, getting together and seeing people face to face. But I went to my high school reunion. It had been 20 years. This happened like over the pandemic. They still had a reunion for the class of 2021, but it was also combined with like every other canceled reunion. So it was like a multi-generational reunion. It was weird. I'll be honest, it was a weird vibe. I don't really like to drink. I don't really like to be like around drunk people. I was like, look, I am going to take a bite of a gummy. I'm going to take the gummy that just leaves me feeling easy breezy. I'm going to go to this reunion easy breezy. I'm going to show up and people are going to be like, she was so cool. She was breezy. She was calm. She was fun. She was engaged. But the problem was that I did not take the gummy that I usually take. I didn't do that. I switched it up. I went with a liquid with like, I guess you could call it a tincture. You could call it hell because that's what I was in. It's hard to control a dropper. I didn't control it. I don't know how much I took. I only know that when we walked into my high school gymnasium, I left my body. I was on the ceiling watching a movie of myself. I was locked into my body. I was like this. Everything was way too loud. I couldn't really talk. I couldn't really like understand what was happening other than like I was recording everything in my mind. Like I could almost like play by play the entire events of that night for you because I was so locked into observation mode and just absorbing it all while being completely unable to like really communicate with anybody. So I was not easy. I was not breezy. I looked like, I'll show you what I looked like. This woman is not okay. This woman is absolutely not okay in any way, shape, or form. I was like that for hours. I was like that the entire time. I texted my husband. I said, help me. I'm in my high school bathroom. I can't move. He was like, I'm in another state. I'm watching a movie with our kids. You've got to stop. You've got to stop contacting me. Go find somebody safe who can stay with you, but it's not me. You're going to have to live with your mistakes, but I will not be living with this mistake. It was the worst. It was the worst. I just remember seeing like teachers and being like, they can't see me like this. I'm going to get expelled because I was so stoned at my high school reunion. I could not form sentences And I was just locked up, locked up, locked up. Mistakes were made. If you can't go to your high school reunion dead sober, maybe don't go. Maybe don't go is what I would say. That's what I would say. This video went a lot of places. If the mistake is small, if the mistake is silly, if the mistake is big, if the mistake is shameful, share it. Share your failure, share your shortcomings, share it with somebody. You can share it with me. I actually would really love to hear them. Leave a comment or message me or something. I'm Nora McInerny. Sometimes things are terrible. Thanks for asking. And sometimes mistakes were made.